Your brain love really needs to be felt. Turn me on, don't make me feel on myself. Brain food, brain sleep, neurology health. Brain love on me. I need you to assess, diagnose, and treat. Reveal what's underneath. Some brain love will give me peace. Prescribe me some doc. Ooh, baby. Brain love on me. Brain love. Brain love. Brain love.
All right. Hey, guys. It's another Sunday night, and you know it's time for another episode of the Brain Love Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Delvena Thomas, a board certified psychiatrist right here in South Florida. And I try to come to you every Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, but there are some Sundays I have missed. Forgive me. But we're getting back on track, and that's what it's about, is trying to remain consistent and be on track and do the things that you're passionate about. Tonight, we have a great topic because we are in the season of giving. And to have a giving heart, it requires a giving spirit and it requires kindness and some emotional intelligence so that you can appreciate the importance of being kind and courteous and not expressing anger as much as possible. Now, we all have our moments, but I have a guest who's coming on tonight who's going to help us to understand why it is essential for us to maintain our composure and not give in to the easy emotions. It's easy to allow yourself to get angry and to curse and to slam things and break things. It's a lot more challenging for us to restrain those types of automatic type emotions. I say automatic for some people. So tonight, I'm bringing on the couch Pastor Eric Robinson. Please help me welcome him to the couch, guys and gals. Hi, Pastor.
How you doing, Dr. Thomas? Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely not. Thank you for spending this time with us. We appreciate you. I love that you're available to me and also to the community so we can have this much needed discussion. Before we go into it, I would like to introduce the audience to you. Pastor Eric Robinson is no stranger to crime, and you guys will find out later that this is a literal statement. He's a former gang member who has seen it all with a string of arrests, which includes assaults and batteries, firearm possession, theft, and cocaine possession. In 1998, while sitting in a Dade County jail, Pastor Robinson's life was forever changed. He experienced an out of body experience that brought him to the Lord Jesus Christ in a way few people can truly understand and appreciate. And, Pastor, I hope that we can definitely get into that discussion as well, about this out of body experience that you went through. Pastor Robinson has always had a passion for juvenile intervention and prevention, and soon after having his rights restored by former Governor Jeb Bush in 2003, he shared his testimony with a Department of Justice hearing officer to gain access to juveniles who were making the same mistakes that he did more than 20 years prior. That's what it takes, man. As a result, Pastor Robinson has worked as a chaplain at the Juvenile Detention Center in Miami, Florida, for more than a decade, and he continues to mentor juveniles who come across his path. Pastor Robinson has worked with the South Florida homeless population for over 10 years. He was previously employed at the Miami Rescue Mission, where he served as the guest services supervisor, and Chapman Partnership, where he served as the spiritual life and wellness coordinator. Pastor Robinson served as the Way Fellowship Church in Pembroke Pines, Florida, under the leadership of Pastor Kelvin Baker, and was ordained as the associate pastor in 2019. Pastor Robinson is certified by the Florida Certification Board in Addiction as an addiction counselor, behavioral health technician, and peer recovery specialist. He uses his training to work with individuals dealing with addiction, mental health, homelessness, and reentry, as well as victims of gun violence and those needing family counseling. When he is not engulfed in ministry, he enjoys spending time with his wife of 15 years, Dr. Carlene Vincent Robinson. He is a father to six children, and their names are Daniel, Eric II, Raheem, Erica, Faith, and Grace Robinson. And they have five grandchildren. He and his wife have five grandchildren. I love the story. I also love that some of your children are named after performing artists and singers. Raheem, Erica, what was the other one? Faith.
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome to the couch, sir.
Thank you so much.
Are you ready to take the couch?
I'm ready.
All right. So, we're having a discussion tonight about, I would say, emotional intelligence, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking anger management. And before we get into it, I want to share with the folks why we're having this discussion. We're having this discussion because so many people find it hard to manage their emotions. So many people get angry easily, and oftentimes it can lead to deadly situations. There was a shooting recently at a Texas United States Postal Service facility that left one man dead. So, a USPS worker was shot and killed at a Missouri City, this is Missouri City, Texas, which is right outside of Houston. The shooter, which he's in his 20s, I read about this. He's only in his 20s. His name is Derek Lott, and he has been charged with murder. So I don't know the details of the case. He shot another man who this other man was, I believe, from my reading, this man was in his 30s, the gentleman that he shot. So I don't know if this was just an argument that happened at work, if they were dating the same woman, if they were dating one another and somebody was going to tell. I don't know. Maybe someone was stealing on the job and someone was going to snitch or tell. But there is an ongoing investigation. So, Pastor Robinson, how does that make you feel knowing that this young man in his 20s has thrown away his life?
Dr. Thomas, I made the same mistakes back in 1996, so I can understand where this person was at. I too also went back to my job with a firearm in 1996, and I I'm not proud of it, but I went inside the place. I tore up the place because someone stole something from me, and I was about to shoot an individual because he also had a firearm. And thanks be to God that I didn't. I ended up serving a year in the county. I never been to prison. With all the charges that I have, I've never been to prison, but I ended up serving a year in the county, and that's where the change happened. But I do relate to this young man because I had that same charge of going back to my job with a firearm.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And, I want to just jump right in and start kind of breaking this situation down because oftentimes when there's a shooting, and especially when there's a mass shooting, we always do kind of a psychological autopsy where we try to determine what were the factors leading to this incident. You and I were talking before we got on that there was a school shooting recently. The shooter was a young girl, a 15-year-old student, I believe, who actually took her own life after shooting and killing a couple of students, and I believe a teacher. Please don't quote me on that. I don't have the facts or the report in front of me. But we always try to piece the story together. So here I have someone who's willing to talk about that moment in 1996 when you were angry, you went to work with a weapon. And you mentioned the other person also had a weapon. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yes, yes, they did.
And you were angry because someone stole something from you. But before we go into the actual situation, I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, did you grow up in a neighborhood where gun violence was prevalent?
Yes, I did. I grew up in the inner city of Liberty City in Miami, Florida.
Did you grow up with both parents in the home?
No, I did not.
Which parent was missing from your home?
My father.
And where's your father now, sir?
My father lives in Washington D.C. Um, I now have a sort of relationship with him now, but he was non-existent during those adolescent years.
Who else was in the home with you other than you and your mother?
Believe it or not, Dr. Thomas, I'm the only child.
So it was you and mama. Did another family member live there? Grandparent, aunt,
just
uncle?
just me and mom.
Okay. Did mom work a lot of hours?
Yes, she did. I was a latchkey kid, and so I had to come home to myself. Mother had to work two jobs just to make ends meet. So I had to fend for myself. And being the only child living in the inner city, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I bet you. Was there a lot of communication taking place in the home between you and mom?
Yes, during break, sometime if I needed help with homework, I would have to call her at work. I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but my mother was a PBX operator back in the 70s. And so she worked at a central bank, and she also worked at Jackson Memorial Hospital. And so I would have to call her, and let her know I'm home, if I needed help with homework. But, I didn't see my mother until that morning.
Okay. So mom worked during the day full time at one job and she worked a second full time job in the afternoon and the evenings. Or
Correct.
did she? Okay. Um, so whenever there was some sort of stressful issue for you, how did you learn to cope with it? Would you wait for your mom to come home or would you call and say, Mom, this happened at school. I don't know how to deal with it. Or this happened on the playground or on the basketball court. Or did you just try to lean on yourself or on your peers or to the older men in your neighborhood to help you deal with stressful situations?
Dr. Thomas, you hit it right on the head. I bottled it up where I put everything on myself because I already knew that, my mom, she was working two jobs. She was already stressed. And so, as they say, boys shouldn't cry and boys shouldn't show emotions. And so I learned that at an early age that I was the man of the house. And so, I carried, all those emotions and I didn't let anyone know, what was going on in my life, as far as being bullied, and being alone, at home without anyone there, having to deal with the neighborhood kids. And so everything was on me.
Okay. So you did the best that you could with much respect to your mom. I know she did the best that she could, working two jobs, trying to survive and pay bills and just take care of you. You did the best that you could with what you were dealt with.
Yes.
Did you have any uncles around or older cousins or family members to assist you?
So later on, after we moved in Liberty City, I did have an uncle that lived next to me. But unfortunately, Dr. Thomas, all my uncles were addicts.
Gotcha. Understood. Understood. And so when you were, let's say, in elementary school, what type of kid were you? Were you a kid who was quiet and submissive and nice, or were you quiet and if someone rubbed you the wrong way or threatened you, you would protect yourself?
So Dr. Thomas, if you can allow me to,
Please.
what happened was that my mother came out of a domestic violence marriage, her first marriage to my stepfather, and so the damage was done right there. So what I understand to be true is some is there's a fight or flight emotion, and so me, I didn't learn the fight, to fight. I learned the flight, and so I was very passive. I was a very good child. I didn't want to fight anyone because I grew up in a home of domestic violence. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that some kids become aggressive, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aggressive at all, and so I didn't want to see anyone
Mm-hmm.
hurt, and so I was bullied in school, and so I had to live with that every day. But to get to the point, Dr. Thomas, I didn't know that I didn't have a father until someone asked me to produce my father. So I was in the Cub Scouts at Ponciana Park Elementary, and they asked us next week, please bring your father. I ran home crying because that's the first time someone asked me about a father. And so when I saw my mother, I asked, where was my father? And that's where the anger started at.
How
I
old were you when that happened? You said Cub Scouts, I guess elementary school?
Yes, about 10 years old.
Okay. And what did mom say when you asked her
Well,
where
she
was your father?
well, trying to explain to a 10-year-old, she tried to explain the best that she could. She explained that she was in a relationship with with my father in Washington D.C. And once she
Mhm.
became pregnant, she thought it was best that she moved back home to be with her mother for support. And so she explained to me that my father lived in Washington D.C. and that she would reach out to see if she could make contact so I can meet him.
How long did it take for you to meet him that first time?
Took about 2 or 3 years for me to
Okay.
meet him because I guess he didn't want to step up to the plate. He hadn't been in my life for the last 10 years, and so it probably was until I was about 12 or 13 when I actually went to Washington D.C. to meet him.
Do you mind saying briefly how that went?
It was horrible. I met his my stepmother and my two siblings, two sisters, and it was a horrible experience.
Wow. Was it horrible because you didn't feel the love, your father didn't embrace you and say, "Oh my God, son, I missed you so much," and or was it horrible because of hazing from the steps half sister or stepsister or
All of the above. My father was a police officer. He's retired now, and
Mm,
he never really showed me any love, even when I was there. Never explained, what the circumstance of why he would have hadn't been in my life for the last 10 to 12 years. Um, my mother-in-law, I'm sorry, my stepmother. I can remember um, them taking us to the park for the summer, going to the pool, and she looked back at me and said, "Tell them that you're their cousin."
mm,
And my sisters was like, "You're not my brother."
mm.
Yeah. So that
Wow.
that just added to the anger.
Yeah. So you were there at age 12, 13, had this horrible experience. When did you go back to see him?
I didn't.
I want to interject something, Pastor, and I plan to ask you this question later in the interview. And that question is, why do you think men, and I want to say black men, I'm sure this happens in Latino and white communities and, you know, indigenous communities. I'm sure this happens in other communities, but I know the black community the best, and this is what I always say on my podcast when I talk about certain things that I feel I see a lot in our communities. And I see this a lot when I talk to my black male patients. There's no father, no role model. Just the other night, last week, I did an episode on men and why they don't cry. And I talked about the young man Travis who won the Heisman Trophy. He's Colorado Buffalo player, plays both offense, defense. He cried. He allowed himself to cry when accepting the award and doing his speech. But I remember in 2016, Lamar Jackson just could not talk. And from what they showed in these edited videos, he choked back tears the entire time he should have been giving a speech and kept apologizing and saying, "Man, this is crazy." But he wanted to cry, but wouldn't allow himself to cry. So I guess that is a packed question. Why aren't our black men showing up for their young men? Why aren't they showing up for their babies? Why? And then we can talk about maybe later why men don't cry. Why don't men, black men in particular, allow themselves to cry? Why aren't your brothers showing up for their kids?
Dr. Thomas, I'm also guilty of not showing up. I have 6 kids from 5 different women, and I'm not glorifying in it. The only difference about me, Dr. Thomas, is that even though I wasn't in the household with my kids, my four, um, I was there for them. I was a part-time father. They had to share me with the alcohol and the women, but I
Gotcha.
but I was there. So to answer your question is, hurt people only hurt other people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I, I, I didn't have any positive male role models in my life. And what I learned from older guys is that, hey, just, have all the women that you can. They
Mm,
didn't teach me about condoms. They didn't teach me about being abstinent. They just told me just to, conquer as many women as I can.
darn it.
Yeah, I remember I had my first child at 16 years old.
Mm.
I went to an older guy and said, hey, do you have a condom? And he said, you don't need a condom. It's up to God if she's going to get pregnant. I know it's stupidity, Dr. Thomas.
No, 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 no. You don't know what you don't know. I would never call anything stupid, because when you grow up in an environment such as the one you're describing, that's what you get. And it's not because people are stupid, it's they don't know what they don't know. They don't have anyone talking to them. So all of the things that seem like a natural occurrence or seem like it's obvious to some of us who grew up a different way, it's not a common occurrence for folks who grew up in circumstances such as the ones that you're describing. And
Yeah.
so I made the dramatic face just because it hurt me so much that this man who you look to for guidance, and that's what we're missing in the community is that guidance. We're missing love and guidance as well as Jesus Christ. But it just hurt me to hear that that man said to you, you don't need a condom. It's up to God if you have a baby or not. But I
Unfortunately,
appreciate. Oh, go
unfortunately,
ahead.
yeah, unfortunately, Dr. Thomas, I didn't learn my mistake the first time. And unfortunately, I had kids with four different other women. But thank God that once I gave my life to Christ, I've been married for 16 years, and we have two beautiful kids together.
Congratulations on that. I want to ask you the other four children who you said you shared with alcohol and women, did you ever go to them and say, please forgive me that I haven't been here for you, that I chose whatever? Have you ever gone and apologized and asked for their forgiveness?
Yes, I have, and we have a great relationship. My kids are doing well. Unfortunately, one of my kids, my oldest son, he repeated my sins, and he ended up going to prison for fraud.
Mm,
Yeah, and the reason why I'm not ashamed to talk about it is because we need this, Dr. Thomas. I thank you for Brain Love because we need to share and experience the things that other people have experienced because unfortunately, and I hate to say it like this, in the
mhm.
church, we're all polished now, and we don't remember our past lives.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And who would have thought, Pastor, when you and I were communicating, that little bit of communication we had by email, I just knew in my spirit, like, make this interview happen as soon as possible. Had no idea that you would be the person who has personally lived the life of what I'm trying to understand of why men are not there, Black men are not there for their children. Um, some of the time in their child's life. I'm happy to hear that you were able to readjust and make amends and that you've been there for your children and you're living life in a total different way now. um, had not I didn't realize or didn't remember that you do have a history of crime, never been to prison, but you've been arrested, it sounds like, several times. um, the possession of cocaine, were you selling it or were you using it?
Selling it.
Okay.
That was actually my first charge back in 1989. I was down in Key West, and unfortunately, me and two other guys, we had the bright idea not only to sell drugs but to commit a strong arm robbery. And
Mm.
once we were arrested, they found the cocaine in our possession.
Strong arm robbery and you didn't go to prison?
It's only through the grace of God, Dr. Thomas.
Oh, listen, hallelujah. Hello. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Now talk to us. Oh, go
this
ahead.
this is 1989 in Key West.
Oh,
Yeah, I should have been under the jail.
wow.
Was facing 10 years in prison. Um, but I guess I guess it was a good thing that my co-defendant he gave an alias name, and they just put it all on him, and they actually gave me what 5 to 8 years of probation.
So did your friend go down? Did he
Um,
did he go to prison?
Not sure.
Okay,
We lost contact.
gotcha, gotcha. Before we get into the anger management piece, we haven't even well, we did scratch the surface a little bit for the topic of discussion. Before we go there, can we talk about your 1996? I think it was. You were in the jail. You're out of body. 1998. Pardon me. That's the year I graduated from college. You experienced an out of body experience that brought you to Jesus Christ.
Dr. Thomas, I was facing 10 years in prison. Like I told you, I went back to my job with a assault rifle.
Hmm.
I won't get into the particulars, but God worked it out, and there was a judge. He's passed on. That's name was Judge Roberto Pinero. He was my angel. Um, he saw that I had an anger issue, and he told me that I'm not going to send you to prison, even though you've been arrested 9 times, and a lot of your charges are gun charges. I'm
Hmm.
not going to send you to prison because you have an anger problem. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a year in the county jail with work release. But hear me good, sir, that if you ever come back in front of me again, that you that you're gonna start with 10 years, mandatory, and whatever else you did, we're gonna add it to that. Now, who wants to live like that? Even today, I'm 25 years removed from any crimes, but if I get in any trouble today, I start at 10 years. No one wants to live like that. So as I was sitting in the county jail, going to church and being a trustee, I went to church and I heard a person's testimony, and so I went back to my cell and I said, God, if you're real, and I know that you're real, come into my life and change me. Dr. Thomas, I got to tell you, I escaped that night because I was on a cloud. And I'm scared of heights, Dr. Thomas. And so it seems like I was standing there for eternity, and I heard this still voice say, "Jump to the next cloud." And I said, I can't jump because I'm scared of heights, and all I see is darkness. But I took a leap of faith, and I jumped to the next cloud.
Hmm.
And that cloud lit up, and I sat down, and the very words that came out of my mouth was, "He's real." I was thrown back into my body. When I jumped up, I didn't know where I was, Dr. Thomas. I began to cry. And I heard and I began to ask myself, what are you crying about? And I heard that voice again, Dr. Thomas. It said, you were angry. You hated your father. And he removed the anger from me. And I was able to make a conscious decision that day that Jesus is real. So that's the only reason I'm here before you today, because I had that out of body experience and he showed me that he was real.
So you had a divine moment. You asked for it and the Lord gave you what you asked for.
Yes.
For someone who doesn't have the faith or doesn't feel that Jesus Christ can help them or has no inkling of religion and a higher power, when you're trying to assist them with anger management, what are some of the first things you do with those guys? Because I know you've done some juvenile work, you've been in prisons or jails or the correctional system, inside of the church. So in some of these challenging cases, how do you start with some of these folks to help them to understand they have an anger problem and that they have to address it?
So, not to get too biblical on you, But in
Mhm.
John 3:16 it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in should never perish but have everlasting life." It's that word whosoever. And
Mhm.
so as I explained to him, I was the thief, I was the robber, I was the shooter, I was the liar and the fornicator. But what I love is that he said that God so loved the world that he gave his son. All you got to do is come as you are. And
Mhm.
so this is what I tell young men, and when I go to Everglades prison, I tell them he'll meet you right where you are. You don't have to change. You come just as you are, and you allow God to change you. Because nothing I say or do can change you, but the word of God can. And so it's called love, listen, and love. I listen to them. I listen with empathy, Dr. Thomas, and I love on them right where they are. I'm not the pastor to say, pull your pants up. Once they give their life to Christ, the pants are going to come up. Once they give their life to Christ, the drugs will stop. All I am is the water boy. The seed has already been planted. Most of them, it's been planted when they were young. So I'm the person that just comes as the water boy to plant the seed, and we know already that God gives the increase.
Yeah.
So I
Amen.
hope I answered your question that, you have to meet a person right where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it all with those last couple of statements. Can people, I'll say children and teens with anger management issues, for parents who are frustrated because they have a kid who is easily angered, can be triggered into rage very easily. What can those parents do? How can they start in addressing their children and their teens' issues with anger management?
As you know, Dr. Thomas, being in the field of psychology, it first starts with admitting that, that there's a problem in the household with the child.
Mhm.
A lot of people are in denial. Little Johnny, he have fits of rages, and we continue to overlook or reward, his behavior. So the first thing that I would say is that we have to first admit that little Johnny needs help, and find
Mhm.
a good psychologist like yourself to begin to unpeel that onion. And the reason why I call it an onion is because I have to unpeel that onion and begin to show them where it actually came from. So what I tell when I used to go to the juvenile facility, I say you're in here for the crime that you committed, but the real reason you're in here is because of past trauma. Our kids are dealing with past trauma, PTSD.
Mhm.
Until we address that, then little Johnny can't heal. And
Mhm.
I go down a road with them. Somebody was molested. Somebody's mother was on drugs. Somebody grew up in impoverished communities. There's a million different reasons why a person may be acting out, but you have to go back and peel that onion to find out where it started at.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, don't be afraid of getting a mental health professional involved, whether it's a psychologist, licensed clinical social worker, licensed mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, because when we're dealing with children and teens, as you said, a lot of these things are rooted in the home and rooted in all of the circumstances that occur in the home and what the children see. I think sometimes folks are careless with what they expose their children to. And, we just got to keep it basic: no cursing, no profanity in front of the children, no yelling, no anger, no, if you're having a disagreement with your significant other, do that in private. But I'm going to give you guys 10 quick tips to deal with anger so that you have some takeaways other than all the stuff that we've spoken about during this last 30 minutes or so. But it's always beneficial to any of us to think before you speak when you get upset. Take time I'm sure you've heard, oh, count to 100, count to 10, say your ABCs backward. Try to de escalate on your own by not impulsively speaking right away because you're upset. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to say something you'll later regret. So you want to take a few moments to collect your thoughts before you say anything. And the best way to learn that is in the home as you're growing up as a child, because sometimes, our parents can make us angry. They can do things or set boundaries, which piss some of us off.
Excuse
But
me.
when you're in a household where discipline is maintained, you know that you're not going to get so pissy that you then say something to your mother or your father that you'll later regret. You learn how to control yourself and keep those thoughts to yourself and not to speak, but to mull over it first. So it starts in the home, but if you don't have folks to enforce these things, then you won't learn this in the home. Number two, you can express your concerns, but express it when you're calm. That's just, that applies to you and your significant other. If you guys have a disagreement, don't try to have that conversation while both parties are angry. Wait until you both calm down. I'm sure a lot of you can agree that we can say some things that we later regret when we try to have or engage a discussion. And I don't like to call chats between significant others and family and friends. I don't like to call them arguments. I call them discussions. Don't call it an argument because you kind of words have power. You set yourself up to give in to this being an argument. Oh, we got to yell and fight and curse and scream and throw things and it's illogical. So just call it a discussion. You guys are two intelligent human beings, have a discussion, which then again shows your children how to have a discussion when folks don't agree on something. Regular physical activity can also help us in reducing our stress that can cause us to be angry. So you want to get exercise. If you feel like your anger is escalating a lot, go for a walk or a run more often. If you're in the moment and you're angry, walk away. Go for a walk, get some fresh air. If you feel overwhelmed, get some fresh air, walk away. Taking a time out. Time outs are not just for kids. They are for us too. Give yourself a short break before during that time of the day when it's more stressful for you. If you're more prone to kind of get flippant at the mouth or be unbecoming, go take a time out. So yourself, try to prevent these episodes by utilizing these prevention methods. Identify possible solutions instead of focusing on what you're mad about. Work on a solution to the problem. Work on resolving the issue at hand. I used to get upset because my son wouldn't keep his room tidy and clean the way that I would. I'm a little OCD, but boys are just not that way. So we had to come up with a solution. And quite frankly, I was like, I'm tired of getting upset at this boy. So it got to the point where I just told him, close your room door. If you want to be in that mess, as long as there was no food and drink in there. But if his clothes were on the floor or on the bed, that's your living area. If that's what you want to deal with, okay. So you got to pick and choose your battles. The next thing, stick with I statements. When we're having these discussions, talk about use I statements. Don't always say what the other person is doing. And be respectful during the conversation. You can say things, for example, Mayo Clinic gives us as an example, quote, I'm upset that you left the table without offering to help with the dishes, instead of you never do any housework. So you want to be kind. And as you heard the pastor say, we need more love. And you guys hear me saying that all the time. If we led with love and not anger and divisiveness, things would be so much better. We're almost finished. We got 4 left. Don't hold a grudge. Forgiveness is a powerful tool. If you allow anger and other negative feelings to crowd out positive feelings, you will find yourself bitter. Bitter. We all know bitter people. They don't smile. They don't give the greeting of the day. They are bitter. And they're bitter because they're holding grudges. Use humor to release tension. That's why you guys always see me hanging out with these comedians and going to these shows. I love laughing. And in fact, I don't want to digress too much, but my office and I, we have a video coming up soon called Brain Jack City. So we did a little video on one of the scenes from New Jack City. Can you guess which one? All right. Now, the last two, practice relaxation skills, know when to seek help. And we already discussed that. So, Pastor, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add to this discussion? Anything you want people to keep in mind?
Dr. Thomas, I think you covered everything. Only thing I like to say is that during the holidays, that we should just practice just loving and forgiving.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So if
That's
someone wants to reach you, is it best for them to call you or email you?
both. They can. I'm 24/7. They can call me. They can email me. I have my own nonprofit organization, Saving Families Inc. I can be reached there, and yeah, I work in the community, and so anyone wants to find me, they can find me.
Give us a phone number, please, sir.
Uh, my number is 954-548-4323.
And your email?
Email is savingfamilies at live.com.
Okay, guys, I'm going to add this banner. So is this correct, sir? Saving families at live.com.
Yes,
954-548-4323. To everyone, if you'd like to call Pastor and set up a consultation, you work with families as well, correct, sir?
I work with families. I work with reentry, addiction, and the one that I did mention, Dr. Thomas, is that
Mm-hmm.
I work with Thriving Mind, formerly known as South Florida Behavioral Health Network, as
Yes.
as a peer specialist, and so I work with victims of crime, and so that's right now very near and dear to me because there's so many of African Americans and Hispanics that are victims of crimes, and not only are they the victims, they're the perpetrators also. And so this is the reason why I'm so glad that we're talking about anger, because I see it on a daily basis, working with the Trauma Recovery Network.
Hmm. Okay. All right, folks, you heard it here. I think this was a very useful, helpful discussion.
Bring love on the couch.
I really
Board
coming
certified
on and
psychiatrist,
sharing these
Dr.
gems
Delvena.
and just being so vulnerable and sharing your life story with us. If you're going through what Pastor Robinson has been through, please don't hesitate to reach out to him so that he can help you, including helping you access resources and just change your life around because a man has done it for himself. All
Thanks.
right. Say brain love, Pastor.
Brain love.